This thing looks like it's done. I mean, we're going to need a gravity sample for this video anyways. Let's take one. How's it going? My name's Brian. Welcome to another video. If this is your first time here and you'd like to learn more about electric brewing and see Brewfather tip videos just like this one, consider subscribing. And if you do, don't forget to click that bell so you won't miss a video when it comes out. So this is another one of the Brewfather tutorial videos. And in this video, we're going to show you a recent brew day that I had and logging that brew day and tracking all the numbers and everything so that you can find out what your efficiencies are, you know, where you might need to adjust your equipment profile, etc. So let's jump into Brewfather here and we'll get started. All right. So the beer that I brewed was a blueberry wheat. This is another one of those beers for the wedding. So I'm going to be taking several beers to the wedding, and just kind of a quick rundown on the recipe. 5 pounds of 2-row, 5 pounds of white wheat malt, 3/4 of an ounce of crystal. Did some water additions to adjust the pH and also, you know, adjust the water profile to match what I wanted. Also added some fresh zest. Used Fermentus WB06, which is one of my favorite neutral wheat beer yeast. It doesn't add a lot of characteristics like a normal wheat beer yeast would. So did just a single temperature mash, no step mashing or anything like that. And then I actually fermented in the fermenter at 67 or 68 degrees. So we'll just adjust that and save that. Got all my water calculations and everything there. So I got the recipe here. So then in order to track your brew, you actually need to brew with the Brewfather software. So I'm going to go up here to the little mug with the foam on top. I'm going to click brew. And then the first part is planning. And this is, you might have seen this in the other video where I was talking about ingredients and whatnot. So here's where you can select your ingredients and it'll remove from your stock. So that is not actually what we want to look at. What we want to look at is brewing. And so this has got the whole recipe and all the vital statistics and all that. When you start brewing, you're going to go through... Whoa, gosh darn, that's loud. You're going to continue on through your... adding your salts and preparing your sparge water and all that stuff. Incidentally, I did this beer on the Anvil 10.5 and used the 6.5 that I have for the sparge water heater. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all that, and it shows you everything that's in the recipe there. So now when we get to doing the boil, we're going to go ahead and track all of the measured values. So the first one we come to, and you'll see there's a bunch of values in here, and they're all gray, and you'll notice they're gray when I start entering values. So when we get to, like, let's say we go to the mash, and what I did with the mash on this thing was I waited 10 minutes, and then right before I started recirculation, I took a pH reading. And one of the things that I did with the pH was I had to add like 8 milliliters, and I was really lazy, and I have a big syringe. It's like 50 or 60 milliliters for doing crazy stuff. And I used that. There's the first marking on it is like 10 milliliters. And I thought, well, I can kind of just eyeball it to get 8 milliliters. And here's some footage of me showing that I actually overdid the lactic acid by using that non-granular syringe. Normally I use a smaller one that's like 1 milliliter with tenths of a milliliter measurements on it. So I did that. And then what happened was I actually wound up with more lactic acid than I probably should have. And so in order to adjust that, just literally just a pinch. I reached into baking soda, or sodium bicarbonate as you might call it, and just threw that in the mash, stirred it up, let it sit for a few minutes. And then I took another reading and my pH was right on at 5.2. So let's enter that into the Brewfather software. So you can see here, once I enter the information, you see how it turns white there, and you can see that. So then let's take a look. I did my sparge and all that stuff, and then when I got done with the sparge, yanked the basket out, and which I did use a bag in the basket, which is pretty nice. I actually did like that, doing that. So the boil volume was 7.25 for the pre-boil volume. Now, on the pre-boil gravity, I took a gravity reading, and something that you may not have known is that your refractometers, they're not 100% accurate when it comes to wort. They're made for fruit juice, and so when you introduce wort to them, wort, however you want to say that, then you have an issue where they're off by a little bit. So you actually have to do a wort correction factor. And the way that you do that, there's actually a tool in Brewfather here. And if you want to know a little bit more about finding out what the wort correction factor is on your refractometer, because they're all different, you have to calculate it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll do a video on that. And but for now, let's just use the. Let's see here if I can get this to open up. All right, we're going to go here, and we're going to go refractometer. We're going to go Brix, and what we've got with our Brix, and we'll go to our tools, and we had 10.3. So that gives us a starting gravity of 1.037. So let's hop back over there in the batch and put that in. And right here. All right, so then let's take a look at the post-boil gravity. And after the hour-long boil, I took another gravity reading with the refractometer. And that was... Let's do the adjustment on it. That was 12 Brix. So take a look at what that was. And so with the wort correction factor, that puts us at 1043. So let's go back over there. And we'll enter that in. All right. And then our post-boil volume, I'm sorry, we're enter the same number here for the can't type today. For our post-boil gravity. And then the volume in the kettle was 6.25 gallons. And then I wound up with 6 gallons in the actual fermenter. So we'll put 6 gallons in there. And so it's showing us that our gravity and everything was just about dead on to what we wanted before. The volumes were a little bit off. But as far as everything else goes, we were a little bit higher on our numbers. But actually, some of the gravity numbers were a little bit lower. So it looks like we had a little bit less efficiency than what I had originally thought was going to have. But, you know, I did not stir or do anything like that during the brew day. So, I mean, I'm fine with these numbers, quite honestly. But you can see here how it shows you what the different numbers are and how the differences show up in the recipe and in the software. Then if you want to add a log note down here, you can do that. So let's jump over to fermenting real quick. And before that, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, smack pack the like button. It certainly does help the YouTube algorithm. Let it know that you guys enjoy the video, and to push it out to other people that might want to learn what this software is all about. So let's take a look at fermenting. And so up here in the fermenting, the tracker for fermenting, I'm going to put the readings in here. Now, if you had a tilt device or whatever, that's where you would add this to the fermentation on your batch. But I'm just going to do a manual reading. And the fermentation actually started back on the 24th. And our gravity reading was 1.043, if I remember correctly. And 68 degrees was the temperature. So we'll save that. And we're going to update the reading so it actually starts our graph here. And then I just took a reading today with the hydrometer, and it is at 1.010 and 68 degrees. We're going to hit save there. Now, as you can see here, it creates a graph as far as like what the fermentation did during its cycle. Now, if I had taken another gravity reading, let's say if I took a gravity reading, let's just have fun with it and say I took a gravity reading on the 26th and it was 1.025. Let's do that, and let's see, 68 degrees. Yep. Hit save, and then you'll see how the tracker tracks the fermentation. And if you have a tilt, it does this automatically, but that basically is how it will track the fermentation for you. And then you can, if you want to measure the values for your keg and all that stuff, you can do that here as well. Now, the nice thing about this is whenever you go back, let's go back into the brewing here. And whenever I had all the measurements entered, I can actually pull up an adjusted recipe. And basically what that does is it adjusts the recipe based on the results that you just had from that batch. And so, you know, it'll adjust everything. It'll adjust your equipment profile. It'll adjust it so that everything matches up with what you just had. If you look down here, we'll see the brewhouse efficiency shows 67.73. and then it'll show down here all of the different volumes and adjusts everything based on the results that you just had. So the nice thing about that is if you don't get quite the efficiency that you thought you should have, or you missed your volumes or whatever, and you put all the information in, then it will actually enter the adjusted recipe. This is the adjusted recipe tab that will show you exactly what you ended up with, and then you can adjust that to either add grain or add more liquid or whatever the case may be, so that you can try to hit all your numbers the next time. The developer of the software did say that he is working on a tracking feature where it will be able to track all your batches if you enter all your information, and then you can kind of track your efficiencies, and you'll be able to tell, if a recipe had this ingredient in it, this is how you were affected on volumes or whatnot. I could see that being helpful for like a New England style or something like that. And he wants to add that functionality in the future. So if you start using this now, then you can build your own database of your numbers and then be able to adjust your recipes and everything accordingly as you see fit. But that is basically how you use the tracking feature or logging feature in Brewfather. This has been Brian for Short Circuited Brewers. We'll see you in the next video.